Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has criticized what he calls Russia's barbaric war in Ukraine as the G20 enters or is underway in Bali. Now, he told Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, who's attending instead of President Putin, that his country should get out of Ukraine. Leaders at the G20 are drafting a communique condemning Russia and calling for a withdrawal. Earlier on, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky appeared at the G20 via video link, calling for the war to be stopped. Our chief correspondent, John Cookson, has this report.
There's one issue most G20 members agree upon, their condemnation of Russia's aggression in Ukraine and their demands for Putin to pull his troops out of Ukrainian territory. But the careful wording of an official statement reflects the tensions prevailing at the summit, which includes leaders from Russia and China, as well as many other countries that have sought to hold a neutral stance on the conflict.
Well, I'm going to use this opportunity to unequivocally condemn Russia's hostile and illegal war in Ukraine. And I know that other allies will as well, because it's right that we highlight what is going on and hold Russia to account for that. And I won't shy away from doing that.
Earlier, Ukraine's President Zelensky addressed the conference virtually, saying, Ukraine should not be offered to make compromises with its conscience, sovereignty, territory and independence. And if Russia says that it supposedly wants to end the war, let it prove it with actions, he said. Other issues debated at G20, food security and climate change.
I'm convinced we're going to come out of this crisis we've been through in the pandemic and other things stronger than we went in. Every time we engage, we get better. And today we're focused on investing together and investing stronger than we have in the past.
But discord over Russia's war on Ukraine and festering tensions between the US and China are proving an ominous backdrop for world leaders. John Cookson, Arise News.
John Cookson joins us now from London for more. Good day, John. Let's get straight into it. Now, we see that it looks like the flame has really been fanned on Russia. How much diplomatic pressure is Russia under at the moment?
Huge diplomatic pressure. Hi, great to be on Newsday. We haven't seen the final communique yet. Some news agencies have, and they're reporting that it calls for, and this is the G20 speaking as one, for Russia to stop its aggression, and notes that the war has had a huge impact on the global economy. It also calls for the withdrawal of Russian troops from Ukraine. There's no admission of liability in the communique. This a sop to nations who have in the past shown support for Russia, including South Africa and India, and also China too. Seems to be on Russia's side, or at least hasn't condemned Russia in the strongest terms as other nations have. So, yes, G20 nations, the richest economies in the world, putting out this kind of strong statement is a lot of diplomatic pressure. I'm not so sure there's any more pressure than Russia's already under. I mean, the whole world has condemned, or most of the whole world has condemned Russia's invasion of Ukraine now in its 9 months and called for Russian troops to withdraw. And remember that sanctions are already pretty stringent on Russia, and these are the things that really hurt the Putin regime. So although the pressure is certainly ramping up in Bali with this communique, I'm not sure how much impact that's actually going to have on President Putin.
Well said. Now, what was the main thrust of what President Zelensky told the G20, John?
Zelensky appeared by social media link and addressed the G20 and set out 10 conditions under which he'd consider negotiating with Russia. That would include Putin stepping down and the return to Ukraine of the 4 annexed regions in the south of Ukraine, and the return of Crimea to Ukraine, seized illegally by Russia in 2014. Now, these are major asks by Zelensky, and presumably a starting point for the beginning of talks about negotiations if they were in the pipeline already. We don't know. There will be back channels going on. We know that between America and Russia about trying to come to some sort of ceasefire, at least in the Ukraine conflict. So that was the main thrust of what he had to say. It's material and information that we've heard many times before from Zelensky, who, of course, is fresh back from his visit to newly liberated Kherson. He believes that the Ukrainians, of course, can win this war. And he took the opportunity of setting out his conditions for negotiating an end to the war. But, of course, they're totally unacceptable by Russia.
That's right. Now, we know Russian president is absent. However, his foreign minister represents him. Has he responded to any criticism at all?
Yes, Sergei Lavrov is in Bali, and we heard this morning that he could have been treated in Bali for a second time for a heart condition, although he's not admitting that. He said of Zelensky's conditions that they were completely unacceptable, which is quite predictable, I suppose, from Lavrov. He said also that all the problems are with Ukraine. He claims that Ukrainians don't want to negotiate. And he actually left the room when Zelensky appeared by video link. He didn't want to hear what Zelensky had to say. So Putin's right-hand man, Sergei Lavrov, taking a strong line, saying that the Ukrainians are to blame for lack of negotiations to a settlement.
And John, food security is also on the agenda.
Yes.
How is that being impacted by the war in Ukraine?
Now, you remember back in August, there were about 20 million tons of grain sitting in ships and on Ukrainian port warehouses, waiting to be shipped out to the rest of the world through the Black Sea, a lot of it to go to North and East Africa. And that agreement that was brokered by the UN Secretary General with Turkey, Russia, and Ukraine to free up some of this grain and get it on the move, and millions of tons have been shipped out. That ends this weekend. So what the G20 have to agree is that this agreement should be extended, and I don't think there's any question that it won't be. President Biden had a meeting with Tayyip Erdogan, the Turkish president, yesterday, and I'm sure Biden has smoothed the way forward on some kind of cooperation to extend the freeing of grain from Ukrainian ports, because the world is desperate for this grain, Ukraine being one of the biggest producers in the world.
All right, John Cookson, thank you so much for that update from the G20 summit, and your RISE chief correspondent. Thanks again for tuning in.